Here you go, bro.
Welcome to another edition of 22MW. My name's Tony. I'm coming to you from EBK Studios. Today I'm joined by Kurtis. Kurtis, who's your favorite Ghostbuster?
Bill Murray, of course. Is that like something that's up for debate?
I like Egon.
I mean, like them all, but your favorites, everyone's is Peter Venkman, Bill Murray.
No, mine's Egon.
Sounds weird.
Why?
People are entitled to like different things, as we're about to talk about.
Okay.
Except for Dan in real life.
Yeah, I guess so.
So we're going to get into the Ghostbusters thing. We're a little late to the game here, I guess. Everyone's kind of said there is what they wanted to say, but it's going to come up. Normally I like to avoid these things, but it's going to come up because next week or this weekend, depending on when we release this, we're going to be talking about fandom. With a couple movies we're looking at, fandom plays a big part in this, regardless of what some people say. And we're going to be reviewing the movies, both the original and the new one, next month. So there's no way this wasn't going to come up, so I think this is a good chance to talk about it, but I want to have kind of like a nuanced discussion on it. But before we get into that, I just want to preface this with, we live in this really weird time where everyone has an opinion, right? Like two jagoffs can have a podcast, and
well, I think everyone's always had an opinion. It just now you can put it out there a lot easier, so that makes people more opinionated. Right. And just in general, negativity attracts more than positivity.
And it attracts more negativity. And one thing Tony and I have always tried is, I think we've said this before, is that when we do our reviews and when we talk about movies and stuff, maybe sometimes we get a little ratcheted up, maybe sometimes we get a little angry, but for the most part we always try to keep it real. We're not going to, when Pixels comes out and it's not that bad, we're going to tell you we don't think it's that bad. We're not going to crap all over it just to crap all over it. We're going to say, hey, there was a few things we liked about it.
Yeah, we don't pre-write these things like, oh, I have this really super funny thing to say. It doesn't really apply, but like, oh my God, Paul Blart 2 was like, he took a huge dump on the carpet, and then my mom was coming in, so I had to hurry up and eat it real quick, and then there were still stains, so I had to lick it up. We don't do stuff like that. It's just really not our thing. We just try and have a natural, normal conversation about movies.
Which can get heated sometimes, but we try not to, and that's just not our thing. Our thing is not to come on and play characters who either rave about how great everything is or talk about how everything sucks. And like Tony said, negativity, especially in this age, is a big thing. And everyone kind of has their own opinion now. And I mean, when we were kids, or even like early 2000s, like how many people's opinions mattered? And I don't mean mattered like should matter. I mean, they like anyone paid attention to. Like 100,000 people? Was it even that many?
No, not 100,000. No, I mean, you didn't even care what every one of your teachers thought. Like, let's say you had 3 teachers, your grandparents, one of your parents, like your preacher at church, like 25 people in a person's life.
But I'm talking about just like society. Like, you care what the president.
Okay, so Roger Ebert, throw him in
the
there.
President, a couple of politicians.
Sure, you're getting 30, 35 here.
I mean, I even remember back in 1999, I found it amazing that people gave a crap what John Rocker thought. I think that was that was one of the beginnings of this whole thing where we like really care what people think, and we write reactions to what they think. And part of that is that everyone has an opinion, and there's all these avenues, and people need content. And Tony's exactly right. Negativity, for some reason, gets views, it gets clicks, and more than that, outrage and controversy do. And it's because you get the people who agree with you to share it and pat themselves on the back and say, look, here's someone who agrees with me. But then you also get the people who disagree with you to go on their Facebook or whatever and say, look what this dummy said.
Well, it's perfectly obvious in the latest like big clickbait thing is like, And Beyonce responds with the perfect smackdown. You know, it's just like that gets people on her side like, yeah, Bayhive, baby, let's get them. Yeah, and then it gets people on the other side like, boo. You know, it's just...
Yeah. And
it's wrestling 101.
And that brings me to my next point before we get into Ghostbusters is like those reactions start driving more reasonable people to those sides, and we've reached the point where like nuance is kind of dead, right? There's no room, or it appears that there's no room for a nuanced view. This Ghostbuster thing, perfect example. You're either a hardcore feminist who thinks this movie is going to be great, except you're a little bit cringed out about the fact that the black character's not a scientist, or you're a misogynist person who thinks rape is awesome and you hate this movie. And then, like, there's no room to be in between. If you go, you get forced into one way or the other, right?
And it's so crazy that it's almost come to that I almost live for moments like what happened with Brock Turner this week, where, okay, people like disagreed on the sentence and stuff, but everyone was just like, yeah, what he did was terrible. Like, that just felt really nice for once, just to hear everyone agree on something. So it's terrible that it takes something like rape to do that, but that's just where we are as a society. And I'm not saying I'm not part of the problem, because as Curtis has pointed out to me, I am. But
and I am too. I this may come off as kind of like high and mighty and above the fray. I'm not. I get sucked into these things. I've tried not to. I've made a real effort in the last like year of my life to stop letting things that don't affect my life like bother me. And a lot of this stuff doesn't affect my life, so I don't let it bother me. I think a lot of it's stupid.
Again, when I don't even remember what year it was, but me and my friend Kirby, we were on the internet and we read an article that said, F JFK Jr., I'm glad he's dead. And we were like, oh my God, why would someone say that? Like, you know, I hope I've gotten past that. And yeah, it's like, you can't just like take everything somebody says as genius. They have to have some credibility to the cause, or be doing a huge negative disservice. So, like my example last week with Rose McGowan, I feel like that's doing a negative disservice, a big negative disservice. But like people just onesie twosies, like that Paul Feig is responding to, or that Donald Trump responds to, like, yeah, that's getting a bit out of hand.
Well, that's the other thing. So we all have our own voice now. We all have all these avenues to share our opinions, but we're a bunch of whiny people who can't stand what's said negative about us. To the point, like, one of them's running for president now. I won't say which one, but like those two things don't really go together. A world where everyone can speak their mind and have it sent out into the internet for everyone to consume, and a world where everyone gets their feelings hurt when they see some words they don't like written in chalk to the point that they fear for their lives. Those things don't really go together very well.
Well, that's like a key to something I'm always talking about, is that I just want some consistency out of life. So what that means is, if you're cool that, you know, a character that's always been white, like Johnny Storm, they cast Michael B. Jordan to play him, cool, I'm cool with that. But you also have to be cool that they cast Emma Stone to play a character that's an eighth Asian. Like, you just can't pick and choose about this stuff, because it is the same stuff to different people.
Yeah, and so that's going to kind of lead us into the Ghostbusters thing. And so
I got one more thing. Okay. I want to make a point. So every day when I drive into work, or most days, I work different places some days, but I see this sign that says, this billboard off I-25 here in Denver, and it says, mattress companies are greedy. Well, no crap. Yeah, they're a business. And so part of being a business is you have to figure out what cards to play to get your demographic to be cool with your company. So for some demographics, that's going to be like, hey, for every whatever you purchase, we're going to give $1 to dogs that like Sarah McLachlan music. You know, you have to play to your audience. So when I see a sign like that, I go like, no crap. Companies get in business to make money. That's what they get in business for. So by definition, yeah, they're greedy. So what you get into at this point with a movie franchise is art versus industry. So what are movies? Are they art or are they industry?
They're both.
Obviously, they're industry, right?
I mean, I think they're both, but
mainstream movies like Ghostbusters 2016 is not art.
We haven't seen it yet, but that's probably fair to say.
Well, the reason I say that is because what people like Melissa McCarthy want to say is like, no, it doesn't ruin your childhood. You're just a loser, whatever. Well, if it's art and you've, stuck your neck out there your whole life sticking up for Ghostbusters, then yeah, it could possibly ruin your childhood. That's over dramatic, but again, most of what we say is over dramatic. So,
well, that's one reason.
It's clearly industry.
Well, that's one reason we're talking about this now, because next week we're going to talk about another movie where people are claiming their childhood was raped. That's the words they use, not mine. So, I think this is obviously that plays a big part. So, from my perspective, I love the original Ghostbusters. I even kind of liked the second one. It was my number 2 funniest movie when we did that list we always talk about. I've always loved that movie. I've always thought it was hysterical. And, but at the same time, and I think we talked about this back when we did our RoboCop, like new versus old or remake versus original, I didn't care that they made the RoboCop. It's one of my top 5 favorite movies. The remake had nothing to do with the original. I still thought it was okay, and I didn't care that they made it. And I think we even talked about Ghostbusters, because I think at that time it wasn't officially announced, or maybe they just officially announced it. And I said, I don't care that they're making another Ghost. It's not going to ruin the movie that I love. It's not going to ruin it. It's just not going to. I get people are passionate about things, and I can sympathize with them because of the Star Wars prequels, but I think that this is a little bit different animal than that.
It's not that you don't have those movies available to you anymore. It's that they've ruined the brand of Ghostbusters. If this movie's bad, or if this movie, is whatever it is, you've stuck your neck out and you've been credible. And if it's art, they owe you at that point to be faithful to what you've fallen in love with. Fair is fair. You've stuck up for their product. You've always had its back. They have to have your back. Now, if it's all about money, then that's out the window.
I think it is all about money when it comes to this. You could say that the original movie is art, but it is part of industry. That's a big part of Star Wars, is that it became this giant business, right? That didn't start out that way.
In your lifetime, you've seen it going from 10% of people like Star Wars to 90% of people love Star Wars. And a big part of that is they didn't play to the lowest common denominator. They stood their ground. Those original 3 movies, I was about to say they didn't change. But those original 3 movies in their original context didn't change. The audience changed. So, the people that go see movies on a regular basis nowadays are a lot of people that grew up loving Ghostbusters.
Well, so I do want to get into the gender, and I think we are allowed now again to say that men and women are different, right? Like we kind of weren't allowed to, but now.
Yeah, it's really weird. I don't know. Again, inconsistent.
Well, I think we are, and I think there's good examples. There was another mass shooting today. Have you ever seen a woman mass shoot up a place? Like, does that ever happen? It's always a dude. I don't know what it is about us that makes us go crazy and do that sometimes, and it's very unfortunate, obviously. But I think there are differences, and I think humor is very specific to.
Well, Curtis, the same people that are going to come out and tell you we have to have more female superheroes, Black Widow has to be on the cover art, Rey has to be in the Monopoly game, the same people that tell you that are the same people that are going to say you're a misogynist if you don't go see this movie. So which is it? Do people have different demographics and they can't learn from somebody that doesn't look like them or not? I don't get it.
Well, I think there's something to people, not everyone, but a lot of people like to see characters and people that look like them.
Okay, so then it's not. It's not misogynist then if you don't go see the movie if you're a guy.
I would agree. I mean, I definitely think that this is where we get into the nuances dead part, but I definitely think there are people who are misogynist who don't like this movie because it has women in it. I also think there are people who have I wouldn't call it misogyny, but I don't know, I wouldn't even call it sexist, but I might even fall into this category, is that I think humor is very gender specific a lot of times. It's not even just gender. It's very, real
situation specific.
I see a lot of these, black people memes where it's like, you grew up black, you know this. And like, I relate to them because they're really more, you grew up like in a poor family meme. Uh-huh. And I'm like, oh, I get that. And I'm not black, but I can relate to it. So if someone's telling a joke or posting a meme, I might be able to relate to that, even though I'm not black, because it's not really necessarily about being black. It's about growing up poor. But, I've never been a woman. I don't think I'll ever be one. Never say never. But I am one of those people, and I've gotten better about it. And I actually think all four of the women who are in this are funny. I think Kristen Wiig is
I think three of them are funny. Yeah, I think Kristen Wiig's one of the funniest women in the history of SNL.
I think I come around on Melissa McCarthy after Spy, and
I'm okay with her. I've laughed at her a lot. And This Is 40, she's really funny in that. And then obviously Bridesmaids, she's super funny in too. The only one I don't really care for is Leslie Jones. I don't know a lot of her stuff, and she does nothing to sell me in these trailers.
Yeah, she looks really bad in the trailer. But I don't watch SNL, but sometimes I'll catch the clips on YouTube, and her and Kate McKinnon seem like they're pretty funny. I mean,
yeah, Kate McKinnon, like, I've seen her do, like, the Justin Bieber thing and the Hillary Clinton thing, and she seems like she's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, the Leslie Jones she does kind of have, like, I'm a big, angry black woman type thing, but I think she...
Never seen it before. That's a brand new concept, right?
No, but I think she does a good job with it. I mean, I think she's pretty funny. I think these are funny women, but I am one of the persons who said a lot of time, like, I don't find women that funny. And it's, Amy Schumer, I think she's funny, and a lot of people find her funny. Her humor doesn't really speak to me because so much of it is focused on being a woman that I don't relate to. I don't know what it's like to have sex with a huge male professional wrestler, or something about tampons or birth control. I don't know any of that stuff, so it's not funny to me. Humor is very gender specific.
I've even talked about how I think comedians get less funny when they've had kids, men and women. And maybe that has something to do with I don't have any kids. Maybe you find, these guys that have kids and they get soft way funnier. I don't. Again, because it's situation specific.
A good example to me is Mr. Show. Me and my friends find that show to be one of the funniest, smartest, cleverest, hilarious things we've ever seen, and we show it to our wives, and they're like, "What? This is stupid." And and Ghostbusters is kind of like that too, right? Ghostbusters is I think this is one reason some people maybe come across as misogynist or sexist, is that is like a dude's movie. Not that women can't enjoy it, not that women can't find it funny, but like I think a lot of women don't appreciate that movie as much as men do, right? Like, I'm sure they exist, obviously. Of course, there are women. You have to preface everything you say nowadays, but...
Because when you say usually, people think all. Yeah. But that's not the case.
Of course, there are women who love Ghostbusters. Of course, there are women who find it hilarious, but by and large, it's like a dude's movie, right?
Definitely, and that... So that's where this gets, Again, do some people not want to see this movie just because it has women in it? Sure.
Yeah, of course.
And that's like, okay, maybe by definition misogynistic, but it's not hate-filled. It's just, I don't find women funny.
Well, I mean, there are people who went online and said misogynistic, terrible things because there are a-holes out there who act like idiots.
But who cares about them?
I agree. You should just ignore them, but they rise to the top, and then you have to throw in with them. Oh, some people actually go so far.
The big aside, yeah.
Yeah, which is again stupid. I should be able to say I like the original Ghostbusters. I'm not super stoked for this other one. I don't care that they're making it. It's their franchise. They can do what they want with it. I think these women are talented, but the trailer looked terrible. I mean, there's like 50 different things I can say. Some are positive, some are negative. There's not one reason you hate or like this trailer or this movie.
But doesn't it seem like hypocritical from a Paul Feig standpoint where he's like, you know, everything anyone says negative about this movie is misogyny, blah, 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 blah. But like, if women can carry their own movie, and that's what you're trying to prove here, like, why not give them an original concept? Like, he did that with Bridesmaids. Like, Bridesmaids is a great movie. I never thought, like, oh, I can't like Bridesmaids because it's a movie about women. That movie's hilarious.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to blame him for that. That's the fact that we can't make new franchises anymore. Yes, it does happen, but again, that's the usually exception to the usually. Like, it can't be done. Everything has to be an existing proven IP. That's just, it sucks, but it's the case.
No, he's proven differently than that. Even Spy, which we both ended up liking, if I can recall correctly, did well at the box office. Like, he's got a track record for proving that differently. Like, he didn't come up with something you could build a franchise off of.
But that's what the studios want. They want to build a franchise off of it.
But why couldn't he come up with something? He's clearly a creative guy. So you're saying he's exhausted everything in his arsenal, and now he's to the point where he's got women stage diving and going, oh, I don't know if it's a lady thing or a black thing, but I'm mad as crap.
No, what I'm saying is that's just where we're headed. Like, and the main reason is people steal things they don't know. Like, people have a harder time stealing things that they know and love. Like, fewer people will go out and steal Marvel movies or Star Wars movies because it's not even a conscious thing. It's like a subconscious thing where they're like, oh, I like that stuff growing up. I like it now. I'm going to go out and buy the DVD. I'm going to go to the theater and see it. I'm going to buy the digital copy. Whereas, like, when Bridesmaids come out, yes, those movies did well, but they didn't do as well as some of these huge blockbusters that are based on existing IPs. Like, it's just the world we live in. Like, is it unfortunate? Yes, I would much rather them not taken a franchise I really like and done this. But I totally understand why they did it. It's a business decision.
I don't think these remakes and reboots just make tons and tons of movie. For every Star Trek, you've got a million honeymooners.
Yeah, I mean, they're not all going to be successes for sure, but again, that's what the studios are doing. Like, that's the route they've decided to take, and it's their money and their franchises. Again, it's unfortunate. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it, but I get why they're doing it.
So let's talk a little bit about, like, society and how you convince society of things that they don't necessarily agree with over time, right? So number one is you want to approach it from a standpoint to where it doesn't even really benefit you. You don't have a lot to gain from this. A good example of this is Duke University put out a study that said homework for elementary age kids doesn't work. It doesn't do anything positive for them. It actually does some negative. So Adam Carolla sees that, and he wants to go talk to the principal at his kid's school. But his wife reminds him, we can't do that because our kids are dumb. So then he wants to talk one of his kids' friends who is really smart, their parents, into going and telling them. Because, again, when you approach a situation, you have to approach it like, oh, I have nothing to gain from this. So when Dan Aykroyd comes out and says, hey, I like this movie. Well, yeah, you're going to make a lot of money off this movie. You're a producer and a writer. Yeah. So that doesn't work. Bill Murray, who seems to be a pretty credible dude, has a little more credibility that he likes it, but still not a ton because, again, he's in it. So the other thing is, too, like, if this is your big stance, we're putting this that, women can carry franchises and sell out the box office, too. You got to put forth a better trailer than this, right?
But even people who got mad at people for not liking the trailer agreed the trailer was terrible.
Right. So it's like when they got ready to break the color barrier in MLB, they wanted a guy like Jackie Robinson to be the poster child for it, not a 2007 Allen Iverson or a 2014 Jameis Winston. You have to sell it to people. You want people to come around to gay marriage? You send Ellen out there and you have her dance at the beginning of her show, and people are like, yeah, we love Ellen. But whether that's right or wrong,
it's reality. You don't.
It's reality.
Beating people over the head with stuff, whether it's religion or your super tolerant, progressive views, it doesn't work. I mean, in some cases it does, but for a lot of people it doesn't work, and it's totally negative. Again, I mean, like, I don't want to get too political here, but I think one reason, like, that gay people had such a quick, I don't want to say quick, but like we kind of went pretty quickly from like being gay is like not good to like, oh, no one cares. And I say
less than 10 years.
And I say this after some guy just shot up a gay club, so I know it's maybe not the best time, but I think most people.
But again, not all.
Yeah,
not all.
Yeah.
But usually, people in the span of 8 years or 10 years went from like, oh no, I'm strongly against this, to like, oh yeah, I don't really give.
Yeah, and it's because like you can't hide from gay people. You're related to them. You work with them. Like, other things can be very segregated, and we seem to be segregating them more and more, but that one was a really hard one to segregate. And also, like Tony said, people like Ellen, shows like Modern Family, it was great marketing. And yeah, I'm not saying that's right, but it works. Yelling at people and calling them names doesn't get them over to your side. It just makes them angrier and more resentful.
It's like if your kids don't like taking medicine, but you put it in a Reese's peanut butter cup, they're going to enjoy it, and they're going to get used to taking it, and then eventually they'll just take it on their own.
Yeah. Like, I remember I used to work with this guy, and we worked at the World of Coke, and we worked with a couple black guys in the stock room, and he once told me, those guys are really cool. Why can't all black people be like them? And I'm like, well, how many other black people, like, do you know more than, like, their name? And he was like, none. I'm like, so the only two black people you really know, you think are really cool and you really like them. Like, maybe, he spent time with people that were different from him and realized, oh, they're not that different. And I know in the military, you would hear that all the time, like especially at boot camp when you brought people from these very segregated backgrounds and they had to live in this giant squad bay with people from different religions and races. Like, you would hear that all the time, like, oh, I didn't realize that we're kind of more the same than different. That's how you be progressive, is you put people together. You don't constantly divide them into groups. But we're getting a little off topic.
Okay, so to get back on topic.
I just wanted to go, because I wanted to follow up to what you were saying a little bit. Like, you may not like that they've hijacked an existing franchise, but can you not at least give them credit that they're going out and making their own female movie instead of whining that other movies don't have enough female characters? Can you give them credit for that?
I don't know that deserves credit, that's in it like that. But sure.
Well, I mean, you were just complaining about that 2 weeks ago with Rose McGowan telling her to shut up and go do your own movie. Well, isn't that kind of what?
Well, again, this doesn't feel like their own movie because they took a pre-existing.
Again, that's a business decision.
Again, I want to know, is it art or industry? But so let's get to the first trailer. Okay, so it comes out, right? And it's got really bad, tired jokes in it. It's not funny. I think that's pretty universal, that it wasn't funny.
It's also, it makes you think it's set in the same universe, even though they kept saying it didn't, which was confusing. But then when you watch the trailer, it's also stealing scenes from the original, almost exact, complete copy, like shot for shot to some extent.
Okay, so that was my point, is it lives in two worlds, and it's confusing. It's definitely confusing to me that you started out with, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, whatever it was, 4 scientists. Like, you started out like that it's in the same universe as the original franchise, and then you do things like the symbol's the same, Slimer looks exactly the same.
They're in the library meeting the ghost. Hey, look, I bought a hearse for the Ecto-1.
So that, to me, again, makes it feel like this is capable of ruining someone's childhood, because they're not taking their own avenues to get to this and just saying like, oh, we're making a movie called Ghostbusters 2. It's like, no, we're going to take a lot of stuff they did in the first. And so it's like they want to distance themselves, but they don't.
Well, that's where I will get on your side, is that I'll give them, they got to hijack a franchise because that's what we're doing nowadays. But how about make it your own? I mean, that's a big problem with this trailer and what people perceive this movie is, look, we're bringing back some franchises. Creed brought back the Rocky franchise, made it its own, was very faithful to the source material. People loved it. Same thing with Star Wars. We're just going to continue where we left off. People loved it. This movie is in this weird spot where, it's taken this movie that people love, and it can't decide if is it a reboot or is it a remake or is it just the trailer's very confusing, and and people are already apprehensive about this movie for the reasons we've discussed. Yeah, it's gonna be not a good reaction, and then you start criticizing people for the reaction, and they're gonna lash out even more. So that's where we get into what I really hate about the outrage culture. Is we get outraged over the outrage, and then we get outraged over the outrage, and then we're just yelling at each other, and then we got to take sides, and maybe we have to throw in with someone we don't totally agree with because again, nuance is dead.
And so this is one of those cases where this really, really is like going to be an obvious terrible thing, that the outrage over the outrage, because this is actually the best thing that Paul Feig could have ever asked for, is because all this is going to do is make people go get their own opinion by seeing the movie themselves.
I think it's going to be a huge hit. Not critically, but box office. I think a ton of people are going to go see this because of all the drama.
I agree. So at the end of the day, that whether that was intentional or not, this marketing that they've gotten for essentially free, they've put out a couple of terrible trailers and stuff, but this marketing they've gotten is invaluable.
Yeah, I agree. And again, on the outrage thing, I mean, you can't even come out with a like calm, nuanced view. James Rolfe did that. And here's another thing, just to build on the James Rolfe thing. So this is a guy who really loves Ghostbusters, right? He did 3 or 4 episodes of his show on Ghostbusters games. He did a movie.
He's the angry video game nerd.
He did 3 or 4 angry video game nerd episodes on Ghostbusters. I think that's the most he's ever done on anything. He also did a couple of episodes on like naming movies and how they change the names and they go from numbers to subtitles. Like if you watched and followed his show or the things he puts online, everything he's saying totally makes sense and is something that someone who is a fan of him would expect him to.
It's consistent.
Yes, exactly. And it's very reasoned and calm. And people went nuts on it. And one reason I think there's a lot of women who don't understand how much men love Ghostbusters. And then I also think there's a lot of younger people in general, men and women, who like don't really understand how people who are in their 30s and 40s feel about that movie or any movie. I don't think people who are under 30, maybe under 25 especially, I don't know that they have the attachments to things that...
Yeah, we've talked about that before because there's so much accessible to them. They don't stay committed to any one thing for years and years and years because it's just, I finished watching X-Men the animated series. I can move on to Spider-Man the animated series immediately, and then, I'm ready for Game of Thrones. It's just bing, bang, boom. It's not... I can only see what the TV shows me, and the TV's playing something new, every week at 8 to 10 o'clock. It's I have 50 outlets and 500 new hours of content for every hour in the day.
Right. Whereas we had to work to see these things, right? We had to go to the video store and get the movie and use our one rental for the week or the month on that movie and had to decide, do we want to see Ghostbusters again or do we want to watch something new? We had to wait for it to come on TV at a given time, at a given part of the year, and then ask our moms if we could stay up late and watch it because it's not going to come on again.
Or set the VCR and hope that it works out. Because I don't know my track record with VCRs, but it's not 100%. And again, when something only airs once...
And watching these things just were really special moments in our lives. It was a huge treat to get to watch something. I know that sounds absolutely insane today. But it was a huge treat. Like, oh crap, we're going to get to watch Ghostbusters, or we're going to get to watch one of the Star Wars movies. By the mid to late 90s, that was kind of over, and everyone owned every movie on VHS, and the DVDs came out. and then streaming came out, and now it's, you can watch whatever you want whenever you want, and I don't think people are going to have the same emotional. Yeah, there's always going to be things that people, this movie spoke to me and it really meant a lot, something and stuff like that.
But con worthy, like, I don't know if there's a Ghostbusters con, but you hear all these cons. I don't know that there's going to be anything that's come out in the last 10 years that's going to, produce a con worthy where people from all over the world fly into a major city and get together and talk about it.
I mean, not one that's going to last 30, 40, 50 years like some of these other things do, like the Big Lebowski thing or other things.
Also, you have the factor, too, that, like, I loved Zach Morris on Saved by the Bell. I thought he was super cool until I realized that, like, he's a ripoff of Ferris Bueller, and Ferris Bueller is way cooler. So you have the people that this will be their first knowing of the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and to kind of circle back to around where I was going, I just think these younger people don't get it, and when they see people saying, this ruined my childhood, or I have an emotional connection to this, it seems silly to them, and I could kind of see that, I guess. I disagree, because I'm one of those people, and, I obviously have an emotional connection to a lot of the stuff I watch. I'll never go as far to say something new is going to ruin my childhood or anything like that. The Star Wars, Star Wars prequels were pretty close, but
so I think that goes hand in hand with stuff like this. Like one of my favorite movies is Independence Day, right? They're making a new Independence Day, and they recast Mae Whitman's character from the original in the new one. So I'm like, that's crazy to me. Mae Whitman is so talented. Like, why would you not want her back in this role? So I go to look up if she was offered it or what the deal was. And I keep reading these articles and they keep saying stuff like the flawless Mae Whitman or blah. And I'm like, do we just have no integrity to the words we're using anymore? And that's why it ruined my childhood. It's just on par with everything else. It's just an extreme over exaggeration of trying to say something with more impact than we said it 6 months ago. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, and to go back to the AVGN thing, like, again, this guy just had a very reasoned review. Did I agree with everything he said? No, I don't think it's going to ruin my childhood again, but he just calmly stated, and again, he was only saying things that he knew people were. I don't even think he knew people would ask him. I'm sure they were already asking him. People who follow him know he's a huge Ghostbusters fan, probably one of the biggest. Again, the guy went to New York and filmed a movie where he went around to all the sites in the movie, the firehouse, and different things. The guy's a really big fan. So obviously he knew or already knew or was that people were going to ask these questions or already had asked him. And he was just answering the questions. I'm not going to go see it. I'm not happy with what they're doing. I'm not going to give them my money. I don't like the name thing. Again, he covered names before. They were going to ask him about the name thing. And it instantly turned into the articles were just so mean. They were whiny man baby and
I just, all I saw was stuff that clearly people hadn't watched the video. They just saw the topic and ran with this ideal they're trying to put out there.
Yeah, they did no research into who he is or what he's done. It was just here's this guy with a decent YouTube following. He must be some men's right advocate who doesn't like female Ghostbusters, even though he never said that in the thing. The only thing he ever mentioned about the gender was that people were going to start calling it the girls' Ghostbuster or the women's Ghostbuster, and he didn't think that was really. It seemed like he didn't really think that was fair to the movie. So if he said anything gender related, it was positive, not negative. He didn't really cover it at all, but there was just article after article calling him names because he said he wasn't going to go review the movie. And I get some people said oh, real brave to say you're not going to go see it. But again, he's answering questions that his fans are going to ask him.
No, honestly, I think that is brave. I do. As somebody that, listens to his audience and tries to put out content that his audience will like and that they want to hear his opinion on, because again, that to me is, heartwarming that there's people, not a million people, but a good chunk of people that want to tune into my podcast and listen to me talk every week. That means a lot to me. So I want to give them what they're asking for. And I know people would love to hear his take on this Ghostbusters movie. So to me, it is brave. I mean, not brave in the sense of like veterans like Kurtis who went over, to Iraq or stuff, but brave in the sense of like you can get breast implants and call yourself a woman and be brave. Like it's as brave as.
Well, he's in a no-win situation too. He's either going to come on and say it sucks and everyone's going to attack it for the same reasons he said he didn't watch it, or he's going to come on and say it was okay, and then that's not really his shtick or very interesting. I mean, his shtick when he's a character, and he didn't really do that non-review in character, but.
Well, now he seems to do more Roth stuff than angry video game nerd stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway. So that people can distinguish between the two that follow him. Again, if you know the guy, it's super easy. But I guess if you're just watching it one-off and want to make an opinion because you're a respected journalist, then go for it.
Well, again, I mean. Most of the people I saw criticizing again seemed like they were younger bloggers, and again, I don't know where we got into this position that we listen to like what 22 and 23-year-olds have to say about the world. I mean, isn't that why you have to be?
Sarah Silverman says we should.
No, you know how I know that? Because I used to be 22, 23, and I was an idiot, and everyone I knew I was an idiot. Like, it drives me crazy that I see like CNN reporting on what 22-year-olds say as if like that matters. And that's a little dismissive and a little arrogant for someone who's 36. But even at 36, I don't know that I should be really telling you how the world works. Guarantee I can tell you better than a 23-year-old. Maybe not every single one of them, but most of them, because I've done a few things in my life. But I don't understand where that came. Like, when did we start doing that? Isn't that why you have to be 35 to be president or 30 to be a senator? Like, so that we don't have idiots who don't know how the world works and have never been out in the real world, like making decisions on things.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely recognize it, and we all have. Okay, I'm 30. I know that at 30, I know a lot more about the world than I did at 25, and at 25, I felt that way about 20, and so on and so forth. So that's just part of life. So when Sarah Silverman comes out and says like, yeah, I just always try and go off with the call. Like, I know this stat's bullcrap, but I've heard this many places. It's like 1 out of 5 women that go to college gets raped. Like, so I'm supposed to be agreeing with. I don't know. I don't get why we put such a high pedestal on people that go to college, that are currently going to college, rather. Sure, doctors, lawyers, all these people, they go on to do great things that our society needs. But just because somebody's going to college doesn't make them smart. And I'm sure Kurtis, having been in the military, he met many an officer that were dumb as crap, but they were his boss because they went to college.
And many an E8, but
there you go.
But what bothers me so much about it, South Park kind of nailed it in that PC, the recent series, is that most of these
season. This isn't Britain.
Yeah, but there was kind of a, you know what I mean,
overarching story for the season, but still not a series. Yeah.
But I like that basically they portrayed everyone as a white person, because most of these people who write all this stuff online are rich white college graduates who are in their early to mid 20s whose parents subsidize them so they can live in Manhattan when they make $20,000 a year working for some blog online that Hulk Hogan may or may not have put out of business pretty soon. Like what does a rich white 22-year-old whose parents can afford to let them live in New York City know about the world? Probably not very much. So why are they writing about all the ills of society? It really bothers me. Again, I shouldn't let it, but it does. And the worst part is, like, there's people listening to them like they know what they're talking about.
That's the worst part, yeah. That definitely is.
Because that part may affect me at some point. I guess that's why I kind of care about it. But back to Ghostbusters, like, I don't care that they're doing this. It's not going to ruin the original movie for me. It's not going to ruin the cartoon show that I used to kind of like as a kid. Ecto Cooler still tasted the same. But I get it. People get passionate about these things. I totally understand.
And that's what you want, too. You want to put out a film that garners a following.
Right. We're going to talk about this in People versus George Lucas, so I'll probably talk about this again soon. But, kind of one of the things they bring up in that movie is that only someone who made you love something so much could commensurate that much hate from the same people, right? It's the ones that we love the most that drive us the craziest and make us the angriest. I mean, I'm looking at someone right now that I can totally relate that to. I mean, the people who drive me the craziest are my mom, my brothers, my wife, and my son. Why? Because those are the people I love the most. And I think stuff like Ghostbusters or Star Wars is the same thing. It's because we love it so much that we can get so passionate about it and so angry in it. And I think some people don't get that. I think younger people don't get that. And I'll say I don't think a lot of women get that. Like, I mean, again, gonna say it. Of course, I don't mean all women, but if you look at people who talk about stuff online or have a podcast like we do or have a YouTube channel where they get real passionate about things like this, it's mostly men, right? Like, when I tell people I do a podcast, like, some of my guy friends like say, oh, like, I might like to be on there sometime or something like that. Women are like, what? When I'm at work and we're talking and a movie comes up, sometimes we'll be breaking team meeting and I work on, it's me and another guy and our boss's man, and it's like 4 women. And sometimes as we're breaking the meeting, a movie will come up. And then me and the black guy, so we're different, but we're men. We'll sit there and just talk about Batman v Superman for 10 minutes, and because a woman mentioned it, and then the women look over us and like, why? I just asked if you saw it. You didn't have to go into a 10-minute discussion on it. Like, I mean, it's just we're wired differently, right? Like, I mean,
I've had many a women listen to my show and go like, yeah, I can't listen to your show because you disagree with every movie I like. And I'm okay. We have different voices. That's perfectly fine. It's weird when you have to get, crazy and nuts about somebody just having a different opinion, and you start throwing names their way and you're not really backing it up with facts. And it's, again, I've been talking about this forever. Demographics, you know your audience. And again, look at the Marvel 13 movie arc. Look at how many people went to go see Iron Man opening weekend. And then you go up, and by Avengers 1, you've peaked. I think Iron Man 3 went a little higher. But anyways, you've peaked, and then now it's gone back a little bit. Like, you just have demographics that you appeal to, and that's your audience. And again, if it's art, you owe some sorts of respect to them for sticking up and supporting your product. And if it's all about money, then you don't. It's really up to you to decide.
Yeah, and again, it's not to my wife likes the Marvel movies. She likes to watch them. She doesn't want to talk about them for 35 minutes and record it and put it on the internet. She has no interest in doing that. She enjoys watching the movie. So she probably doesn't enjoy it on the same level I do, and that's fine. And there are definitely women who do. I definitely noticed a lot of younger women, I guess, do kind of get more into the what was traditionally, male nerddom or whatever you want to call it. Like, I wear these, like right now I'm wearing a shirt with Optimus Prime on it. I'll wear some of these nerd shirts that my wife bought me to kind of like when I go out into the world to I think she bought them for me so that when she sends me out into the world, it's like, look, he doesn't care. He's he's spoken for. But like some of these younger women in their 20s are like, oh, I like your Han Solo shirt, or oh, nice Vault-Tec t-shirt. Like I get compliments from young women on these shirts all the time. A 30-year-old woman or a woman my age would just be like, what a loser wearing that shirt. But so I mean, things change, and that's fine and that's good. But you got to kind of put things in perspective in different demographics. There's a lot of people who are our age, in their 30s, in their 40s, who love this movie. And they don't like what the new movie looks like it's going to be. And the first trailer certainly didn't help. And yes, there are some people out there who are a-holes who are just going to go online and say, like, they're going to drop C-bombs and say awful things about they hope bad things happen to people. Those people are terrible. Like, they deserve whatever befalls them as far as bad luck or karma on their lives. But some people just don't think this is going to be a good movie, or they don't like the way it's going. Some of it has to do with that they replaced them with women because they're men and they related to the men characters. That's the way it is. Again, sometimes you like that one college basketball team that has 5 white guys in the tournament.
You know, I just thought about this. I don't know if you even remember this, but, you know, there's a show that's been on for, let's say, 20 years. It's called The View, right?
Yeah.
You remember they did a male version?
Mario Lopez was on it.
Mario Lopez, Danny Bonaducci, and some other people. I'm sure it was called The Other Half.
How long did that last for?
I would say probably 3 seasons. I don't know. And it's daytime television, so it's not even like it has to do big numbers. Just some things appeal to some people. Other things don't appeal to people. Some things get grouped in based on culture, situation, gender, age. You know,
and you're free to go outside those norms and like something that wasn't maybe specifically designed for you, or that society tells isn't designed for you. It's A-okay to go out there and like it. It's also okay to say, hey, this was made for me, but I don't like it.
Right. The discussion's not the problem. When you get to the point where you're wishing harm on people and things like that, then yeah, it's probably gone a little too far, but this is just part of life. It's fun to sit down and debate things that don't really matter, because you can't just surround yourself with stuff that matters all day, every day. You'll go insane. It's fun to have little breaks, and, you know, me and Kurtis are both adults, and we go to work every day, and we support our lives, and we like to talk about stuff that isn't that serious.
And I think that's like an important distinction. If you don't like what James Rolfe said, or some other YouTuber said who had negative things to say, or you don't like what Tony and I are saying, disagree with us. But that doesn't mean you have to call us names or say we're pitiful man babies, or...
I don't even care about the name. I just come with you know, a fair argument. If you want to make an argument, make a fair argument, and let's.
Well, I think if you have a fair argument, then you don't need to attack people and call them names.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is let's go with, you know, progressing a discussion. That's what I want. Let's have truth in language, truth in argument, not just like say things just to get clicks. James Rolfe said he wasn't going to see Ghostbusters 2016, but you won't believe what he said next. Click here to find out.
Number 13 will change your life.
Exactly. We're about to blow up the bus, so let's. You got any final thoughts?
The only other thing I was just going to say is, I think this is a fair question to ask, and I'm trying to bring in some other points of view. So maybe the last thing I have is people have asked, well, why is this worse? What, you know, there's been other reboots and other things, like, why is this worse? And of course, their reason is, it's because we've replaced male characters with female characters. As we discussed, that's part of it. Yeah. There's people who love the Ghostbusters who are male. We've talked about how it's kind of a dude's movie. Take what you will with that. They're maybe not super happy about it. They need to get over it, in my opinion. Like, they need to get over it for sure. And then definitely no one needs to go on and say, you know, wish ill will on someone because they're in a movie they don't like. But that's part of it. The other part is, like, the outrage war just went nuts. And, you know, to back up what Tony said, like, I think a little bit of the Paul Feig and Melissa McCarthy, like, part of that is, I think part of the reason they're coming out is they know they're going to get more people by kind of fanning the flames, right?
Again, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it's a good move.
I wish we were going to get to see what this movie would have done without all of this. Like, I've just been interested to know.
I mean, we'll have to wait for the
sequel. It'll still be interesting to see, but I don't think the numbers are going to really tell the tale here. It's got a lot of promotion from
maybe
this.
The drop will tell. You know, I think that was a pretty solid argument for people that didn't like Batman v Superman, was that it made, you know, whatever it made, and then dropped like by 80% the next weekend. So,
and then the other thing about, you know, why it's worse is maybe finally, you're right, Tony. Maybe people are finally just getting tired of reboots. They're getting reboot fatigue. And as we talked about, you know, this didn't go the Star Trek route where it kind of said, Star Trek's maybe not the best example. Maybe we'll talk about that when the new one comes out. But it didn't go the Star Wars route where it said, okay, we're just going to keep telling the story. Or it didn't go the way some other franchises did, where they like Creed or whatever,
legacy sequels.
We already talked about it, but so that combined with, oh my god, another reboot, and it looks like maybe they're just kind of trying to remake the same movie. I think there's all kinds of reasons, but I definitely think that the reactions to the reactions to the reactions to the reactions is why this is blown up so much, and it's basically forced even people like me who don't want to comment on it to have to comment on it, and it's going to do good for opening weekend, but I don't know that it did a lot good for public discourse.
And to talk about remakes for a second, you have all sorts of legacy sequels like we talked about. Those don't really count to me. Book and comic book adaptations don't really count for me, but like when I'm talking about Ocean's 11 pretty much worked, right? That's a remake, right?
And they're going to remake it again with an all-female cast,
which again seems really weird to me. I think that you could just make a women's franchise.
It's not like that's an original franchise to begin with, so that's.
Well, but it was men, right?
I mean, it was the Rat Pack, but I mean, I don't care that they're making an all-female Ocean's 11. Do it; it's fine. I don't have no interest in seeing it. I don't even really like the original ones that much.
Yeah, and if they made an all-male Sex in the City, I would have zero interest in seeing.
Don't care, but go ahead and make it.
Unless Robert Downey Jr. is in it, and then I might see
it. Go ahead. Yeah, look. At the end of the day, not everything's for everyone, and it it sucks that you love Ghostbusters, but if this movie's not for you, then just don't go see it. I think a lot of people are going to go see it because they want to be able to say how bad it is. That's another thing. We're going to get. You've already got a lot of people who've made up their minds on this movie, which is unfortunate as well. But again, the trailer didn't help.
Yeah, and it's. You've got to see it to have an opinion on it. Like once somebody finds out you're bad mouthing and haven't seen it and it's out and it's been out, your argument's invalid because you haven't seen the movie. So yeah, people are gonna go see it. As Kurtis said last week on the best debate or the biggest debate in the universe, Maddox talked about this, and one of the things he said was just buy a ticket to another movie and walk in and see this one. That's really not something I'm comfortable in doing, but I think there will be a good bit of that.
Well, I think opening weekend, you're going to have a hard time finding a seat if you didn't buy a ticket for this. I think this movie's been in the news, so I don't know what else is in it coming out the week before that or the same week, but if it's nothing, I think this is going to be big. It's got Ghostbusters that people know. Again, it's existing IP. That's what we got to do. And there's going to be a ton of people go see it just so they can go online and talk about it, like we're going to do.
All right. What do we got coming up this weekend?
So, as mentioned, we're going to talk about The People versus George Lucas, which will have some similar themes to this discussion. Mentioned in that movie is another movie we're going to see that's finally coming out, which is this is the documentary about the movie mentioned in that movie. It's called Raiders. It's about a Indiana Jones shot-for-shot remake film. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And 20 years in the making, the sequel to Independence Day, which if Independence Day was the original Independence Day was made today, when would the sequel be made? Would it even be 2 years?
Yeah, good point. Really good point. No Mae Whitman, no Will Smith, but we're going to check it out and let you know what we think. Until then, gotta go, son.
Pay attention.